Welcome back, brilliant little listeners, to Simple Stories, Smart Kids, where the animals talk, the people scheme, and the stories are always a barrel of laughs. Today's tale is about one clever farmer and his not-so-clever sons. When it comes time to pass on his farm, he doesn't give them a field. Oh no, he gives them a mystery. Get ready for a story full of digging, dirt, and a surprising treasure at the end. Let's dive into The Farmer and His Sons. Once upon a time, in a little village, nestled between green, rolling fields, there lived an old farmer who had spent his whole life working the land. His hair was white as the cotton clouds, his back bent from years of planting, watering, and, sometimes, arguing with stubborn goats who simply refused to eat their own lunch. This farmer had 3 sons, Tom, Dick, and, you guessed it, Harry. Now, Tom was clever, Dick was strong, and Harry, well, Harry was always hungry. Yes, if there were a championship for biscuit eating, Harry would win with his hands tied behind his back. Now, our old farmer wasn't getting any younger. In fact, every time he bent down to pick a carrot, it sounded a bit dramatic, with half the village chickens thinking it was thunder. But the thing that worried him most was not his creaking bones, but his 3 mischievous sons. You see, the boys were not exactly what you'd call good friends. They fought over everything: who got the biggest slice of bread, who got to drive the donkey cart, and even, believe it or not, who could yawn the loudest. One bright, sunny morning, the farmer gathered his sons under the big pear tree at the edge of their field. The tree was famous for 2 things. It grew exactly 7.5 pears each year, and it had the best shade for napping. The farmer, who was wearing his favorite hat, turns out his only hat, looked at his sons and said, "Boys, come close, I have something very important to tell you." The 3 sons shuffled in. Tom was already thinking up a clever excuse to escape. Dick flexed his muscles just in case anyone needed reminding. And Harry was chewing a mysterious piece of bread he'd found in his pocket. "My sons," said the farmer, his voice rumbling like an old wagon on cobblestones. "In my fields, there is a hidden treasure. If you work together and dig, you will find it, and riches will be yours." Now, if the boys were curious before, now their eyes gleamed like 3 greedy little raccoons who'd found a pie. "A treasure?" exclaimed Tom, imagining himself in a silk suit. "Golden jewels?" asked Dick, warming up his digging arms. "Biscuits and cake?" pleaded Harry, hoping it was the edible kind of treasure. "Aha! Only by working together will you succeed," the farmer chuckled. And with that, he went back to his nap, snoring so loudly that a passing chicken nearly fainted. That night, the sons could barely sleep. Each had dreams filled with grand castles, fast horses, and in Harry's case, mountains of gingerbread. The next morning, before the rooster had even opened one eye, the brothers grabbed their shovels and raced to the fields. Tom brought a map he'd drawn. Never mind that it mainly showed his favorite napping spots. Dick brought his favorite shovel, polished by years of whacking stubborn rocks. Harry brought snacks, of course. They started digging at the north side of the field. Down went the shovels, up flew the dirt. Tom would point, "Dig here!" Dick would grunt and dig a hole so deep even a mole would say, "Too much, mate." Harry took plenty of snack breaks to keep spirits high, which is very important when you're on a treasure hunt. But after a whole day of shoveling, all they found was a rather cross worm and an old squishy boot, left behind by, perhaps, their father in his younger days. They stared at each other, thinking, the treasure must be deeper, or maybe we need to try the south side. And so, off they dug. Day after day, they worked from sunrise to sunset. Sometimes they argued about which direction was south, and often debated whose hole was the straightest. But always, they worked together. Now you should know, the farmer was watching all of this, hiding behind a bush, barely able to keep a straight face. Each evening, he'd chuckle so much his hat shook right off his head. The days passed and, slowly, the field, once full of weeds and wild grass, became neat and tidy, tilled from corner to corner. The soil was as soft as a pillow, perfect for planting anything. The brothers looked around, exhausted but proud. One day, the farmer called them under the pear tree again. "Well, my sons," he said, a twinkle in his eye, "did you find the treasure?" Tom admitted, "No gold, Father." Dick shook his head. "No jewels either." Harry, cramming the last crumbs of bread into his mouth, said, "No cake, sadly." The farmer smiled, a big, warm grin that could cheer up even the grumpiest duck in the village. "Ah, but look at the field. Because you work together, you've prepared the soil perfectly. Now plant seeds, any seeds you wish, and next harvest you'll find the real treasure." The brothers blinked. "You mean—" "Yes," said the farmer. "The greatest treasure is hard work and brothers working side by side. Plant your seeds, and you'll see what I mean." The boys scratched their heads, but did as their father said. They planted corn, lettuce, and, on Harry's insistence, hundreds of potato seeds. They watered, weeded, and watched over their field, working together just as before. Soon enough, the field blossomed. Rows of golden corn, lettuce as crisp as a fresh joke, and potatoes big enough to make a family of elephants happy for a week. The villagers admired the brothers' field, and soon, customers lined up to buy the best vegetables in town. The three brothers found themselves busier than ever. Tom handled the sales with witty banter, Dick lifted the hefty potato sacks, and Harry, well, he taste-tested everything, just for quality control, he insisted. With their father's wisdom in their hearts, the boys learned something important. The real treasure was not gold, jewels, or even a mountain of biscuits, but the power of teamwork and family. And yes, a little snack along the way helps too. From then on, Tom, Dick, and Harry laughed more and quarreled less. They still disagreed sometimes, especially about who made the best mashed potatoes, but they always remembered what their father taught them. Work together, and the harvest will always be rich. As the years went by, their farm became legendary. People came from far and wide, not just for the delicious vegetables, but to hear the story of the clever farmer and his surprisingly industrious sons. The story spread from village to village, and children everywhere giggled at the adventures of Tom, Dick, and especially Harry, who never once went a day without filling his pockets with snacks. And every so often, the farmer, now jubilant and much less worried, would sit back, watch his boys working together, and smile, knowing that sometimes the surest way to a happy home is planting a little mischief and a lot of love. From that day on, whenever the sons dug into the earth to plant a new crop, they'd laugh and tell each other, "Remember to dig deep, there might be treasure." "Agis ositi," and Harry would grin, munching on a carrot, and say, "There's always treasure if you bring enough snacks." So, my friends, remember the lesson from the farmer and his sons. Treasure isn't always shiny or sweet. It's found in working together, having fun, and, if you're smart, always keeping a biscuit handy for the long journey. And that, dear children, is the end of the tale, but the start of many adventures. For fields, just like families, flourish best when everyone digs in together. Now, if you ever find yourself with a grumpy sibling or a chore that seems much too big, just imagine you're looking for treasure. Roll up your sleeves and see what you can achieve together. And if you run into old Harry, be sure to bring him a snack. He'll show you where to find the best potatoes. And somewhere, in a sunlit field under a half-eaten pear tree, the old farmer chuckles, his son's laughter ringing through the air, proving that the richest harvests are made not just with seeds, but with smiles, teamwork, and a pinch of mischief. And that, my dear listeners, is how the treasure was found, where no one expected it, except, perhaps, for a wise old farmer and his endlessly hungry son. The end. Or, as the farmer might say, time for a nap and maybe, just maybe, a slice of cake. And that's the story of the farmer and his sons. A tale full of digging, dirt, and one very wise dad who knew how to plant more than seeds. If you laughed, learned, or just love clever stories, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Simple Stories, Smart Kids for more fun tales every day. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and maybe keep a shovel nearby. You never know where the treasure might be.